We're going to talk today about supererogatories. For shorthand, you can call them super duties. Super duties, duties, super duties. Supererogatories and super duties are slightly different, but for the purpose of making reference to them in casual conversation, you can use those concepts or those terms interchangeably. A super duty is a something good that you will do that you don't have to. You just do it because, well, it's the right thing to do, or it feels good to do it, or it's a nice thing to do. You'd go above and beyond. A duty is keeping the law, keeping the cultural mores, keeping the requirements, the policies, and the prescriptions of mom and dad or friends or the church or social group that you're a part of, all of that kind of stuff. Those things would fall in line with the idea of duty. You have an obligation to act in a specific ways. However, you don't have an obligation to go above and beyond that. An obvious and easy example that we'll come back to from time to time is giving to a poor person or a beggar on the street. I live in Korea, and in the 12 plus years that I've been here, I've seen the same man for 12 years, always crawling along the street, moving about with his elbows because he doesn't have any legs. And so he's actually pulling himself along down the street. I think he's got a dolly that he is now on, and he's gotten that in the last couple of years. So I guess that's progress, but not a whole lot because he's still pulling himself along on his chest, on this dolly with his arms. And he's pushing a little plate out in front of him, and he hopes that people will drop some money into that plate so he'll have something extra for the day. Some people will say, yeah, you don't have to give any money to this guy. He's getting money from the government. He'll get a couple 100,000 won, which is a couple $100. He'll get a couple $100 per month to exist on, so we really don't need to feel obligation. And for some reason, that works in the minds of most Korean people to think that they are absolved from responsibility to act in a generous and charitable fashion towards people. The government has taken that duty away from us. Not duty, super duty, right? We don't have to act in a super duty fashion. We don't have to be charitable. We don't have to be nice because the government is doing it for us, which kind of gets to the whole idea of what the woke would like the government to do. The woke would like the government to take from us all of our super duty obligations, which really are not obligations, or supererogatories, and make those laws so that we can forgive people when they commit crimes, right? We can turn the other cheek when they do something wrong to us. When they steal from us, we can allow them to steal up to $950 worth, right? Because it's going to be milk for their child to drink or food for them to put on their table. Somehow they can turn the iWatches that they're I'm not wearing my iWatch. They're turning the jewelry that they're stealing into something that they can eat. Well, we can have compassion on these guys. And so we encourage our government to change laws so that they can essentially decriminalize criminal actions. Right? Essentially trying to get our government to do the supererogatories or super duties, absolving us of the responsibility of doing those. But the whole point of supererogatories is that we don't have to do them. We do them simply because it's the right thing to do. Government, our society, provides a minimum standard to live by where we can find acceptable behavior. But we don't have to live walking that line. We can live on a higher level, a supererogatory level that means that when we violate our supererogatory non-obligation or non-duty, our super duty, we still don't come even close to violating our actual duties as recognized by society. The interesting thing is this idea of supererogatories, or living at a higher plane of obligation to the rest of society, to ourselves, and to our God, is a very, very Christian thing to do. So that when Jesus would see someone, a man who wants to have sex with a woman, he would say it's it's against the law to have sex with that woman. You shouldn't do that. But then he went on and he would say, but I say to you, even if you think about it, you've violated. What is he talking about? He's talking about a supererogatory existence, living at a higher plane than just what are the duties and the laws of religion or society to get by. It's living at a plane where we don't even come close to violating those rules and those laws. But in fact, the violation of our super duties is every bit as profound as our violation of our duties. So duties would be obligatory actions. We have to obey the law. We have to obey social mores. Obviously, not everybody does, including me, or especially me. I'm not perfect by any means. I've violated many things. But I recognize those as violations, not because I am changing the laws to make the bad things that I've done no longer bad, but to recognize that the bad things I've done are bad, and in fact, I failed to live up to even the duties that I hold before God and natural law and natural rights towards other people and towards myself, much less the super duties. So giving to that beggar I was talking about, he's pulling himself along by his arms on the street that I've seen for 12 years. He's not going away. He continues to exist. Do we have an obligation to give him money? Certainly not. Government has absolved us from that. They're giving him money, a couple $100 per month. Is that enough? Obviously, it's not enough. But we can salve our wounds, our hurt feelings by feeling guilty for not giving, by saying, at least government is giving him something. I don't have the obligation to live on that super duty level. If we give anyway, then we are satisfying a super duty. Now, the idea of super duty has something to do with our intent and our mindset. If we give to that beggar so that other peoples will see us give to that beggar, or so that the beggar will see us giving to that beggar, then we're giving for something other than the true altruistic motivation of doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. We're doing it in order to get some kind of recognition or reward for our behavior. And that reward is enough, right? So it's no longer a super duty. It's something that we do for self-aggrandizement, so something to make us feel better or for other people to lift us up. When I first saw that beggar, I was walking down the street 12 years ago at nighttime, and he was pulling himself along. I passed him up, and I turned around and came up behind him, and I put some money in his little plate. He did not see who I was. And the reason was so that I could do the giving, give the money without kind of recognition or reward. Turns out that as soon as I stood up and continued on my way down the street, a group of young men passed me by, and they stopped me and stopped and said, "We saw what you did. It was a wonderful thing you did. Thank you." And so it kind of gutted the action, the supererogatory of all of its significance. In other words, a good is good in and of itself. If we find any other motivation for doing that good, then it takes away from the goodness of that act itself. Doing something in secret or in the blind so that nobody else could see. If you were blind, right, what do they call that? The ring of Gyges? If you could put on this ring of Gyges, it's a ring that would go around your finger and it would cause you to be invisible. I'm sure it's where some of the powers that we attributed to the Lord of the Rings and the rings that they would wear, and that probably came from this idea of ring of Gyges. The question is, if you could become invisible, no one could see what you're doing, would you do the right thing or would you do the wrong thing? It's kind of related to this idea. If there was nobody there to see you doing a good thing, would you continue doing the good thing? The supererogatory means doing the good thing, doing the right thing, even though you may not even want to. In fact, it's especially legitimate if you don't want to do the right thing, but you know it's the right thing and you do it. So, obligatory obligations would be keeping your promises, don't do harm to other people, help someone that appears to be in immediate danger, and then keeping laws and mores of culture. The super duties, would be all of those things that you don't have to do, but you do them simply because they're the right thing or the good thing to do. So, permissible actions: watching a movie, eating certain foods, choosing a career path. Super duties: giving to charity, giving out of the goodness of your heart, or simply because it's a good thing to do, even if you don't feel that goodness of your heart. Right? In fact, probably better if you don't. When I gave to that beggar on the street, and I always carry a couple extra dollars worth in my pocket. So if I'm confronted with opportunities like that, I can give without thinking about it. The longer I think about it, the more I can rationalize my way out of giving, or rationalize the fact that, I'm not going to be able to afford that drink that I want when I get to the establishment that I'm walking to, if I give it right now to this beggar. So rather than giving myself to contemplate alternatives to these supererogatory, just do it basically because it's the right thing to do. So, giving to charity, volunteering your time, doing something nice for someone, even though you don't have the time or the inclination to do that, or especially if you don't have the time or inclination, risking your life for a stranger. Risking your life for a friend or family member, that's expected. That's duty. Super duty is risking your life for someone that you don't have to risk your life for. You do it simply because, that person has intrinsic value as well. We'll talk more about intrinsic value and Immanuel Kant, his idea of using people as ends in themselves rather than as a means towards an end. It's a pretty good discussion, but that's our next video, or maybe the one after that. So, characteristics of super duty or supererogatory actions: that they're good, they're voluntary, and they're discretionary. In other words, you have the choice to do them. You do them because you decide to do them, not necessarily because you want to, but because you choose to do them, whether you want to or not. So, examples would be acts of heroic behavior, right? Even if no one is there to clap their hands for you or rejoice or give you any kind of medal or recognition for what you've done. Heroic actions. Acts of charity, acts of kindness. Doing the right thing even when you don't have to do that. Those would be supererogatories. All right, so it's beyond duty. It's commendable. It's not obligatory. You don't have to do those kinds of things, right? Examples: charity, volunteering, risking life to save a stranger. Think of them as something like bonus points. Okay? We'll talk about Immanuel Kant and using people as ends in themselves. End, ending, ended, end, ends. Right? The consequences as the results in themselves. In other words, for no other reason but because you want to uplift somebody else. That's coming our next video. I'll talk to you soon.